Welcome to the Be Your Soul podcast. I'm your host, Sky Bradshaw. This podcast is presented in 3 segments to support the energy of your authentic self. Each segment works with today's topic of turning change into growth to build into a message that we hope is exactly what you needed to hear. In the Skylight segment of today's show, we will have author, global speaker, professional certified coach, certified Daring Way facilitator, and host of the Make Some Noise podcast, Andrea Owen, as our guest. Before we dive into the Unclouded Heart segment for spirit messages of wisdom, let's invite ourselves to become present in this moment within our body, mind, and energy. Take a moment to invite yourself to take some deep cleansing breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, allow your body to relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. Relax, 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 relax. And as we move into this space of complete relaxation, we open up our energies to the ancestors, loved ones, and friends to come together today to heal and guide us and lift us to the highest version of ourselves in the light of the universe, so we may hear what we need to hear, know what we need to know, connect how we need to connect, and be what we need to be for our highest and best good and the highest and best good of all involved, as we tune in to receive. Right now, we're in a time frame that is urging us to differentiate between suffering and discomfort. In my opinion, and how I've perceived it through connecting with thousands of clients, is that suffering creates a wound that will need healing in the future. Discomfort creates a space which invites us to make change. This allows us, through practicing positive choice and decision-making, to turn that change eventually into growth. The key is to take that discomfort and make consistent, persistent change that supports our health and well-being, therefore turning it into growth. That uses discomfort as the tool it was meant to be. It allows us to get out of the known box of discomfort that we are in and move into solution-based, problem-solving energy. It is in this space where the creation of new growth happens through the idea of being uncomfortable with the old. Is it necessary to be uncomfortable in order to make change? Absolutely not. Is it how we are motivated to make change more quickly? Absolutely. Discomfort is a great motivator if we allow it to be. The key is to not get stuck in the discomfort, but to free yourself into what you would like instead. Then take that viewpoint and create an action plan around it to allow change to turn into growth. Of course, the other side of this is that we can choose to let discomfort move in and take up residence in our life, which will eventually turn into suffering. This can happen through denial, avoidance, self-sabotage, and the like. If we let discomfort become our story, then it will surely turn into suffering. This is where a healthy self-awareness comes into play. Doing a self-inventory allows you to realize if you are using discomfort as a weapon against yourself in order to limit your ability to grow. The last thing that I want to say is I am not approaching this view out of ignorance. Believe me when I say I have known my share of discomfort, and I have even experienced great suffering in my life. I'm not trying to pretend like shit doesn't happen, because it does. What I'm trying to empower you to do is realize that in this space between discomfort and change, you have a choice on what type of change it can be, and the power to turn that into growth.
Production of the Be Your Soul podcast is made possible in part by Tarot by Sky, because it's your future. Tarot by Sky offers intuitive tarot and energy healing sessions, as well as life coaching, classes, spiritual guidance, and more. Offering sessions via Zoom, email, phone, or in the office in Greensboro, North Carolina, Sky is ready to help you turn change into growth. Book your session today on the web at tarotbysky.com and find her on Facebook and Instagram at Tarot by Sky. Coming up next, a conversation with Andrea Owen, exploring today's topic, turning change into growth.
Today we welcome author, global speaker, professional certified coach, certified Daring Way facilitator, and the host of the Make Some Noise podcast, Andrea Owen. I have great respect for the work that she does to help individuals and companies succeed, thrive, and empower themselves. My first thought when meeting her was, I just found another one of my people. And I am so glad that I did. Thank you so much for being on my show. I greatly appreciate you.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, little story before we, start talking about the topic of turning change into growth. Part of my concept of putting the podcast together, I kept waiting for all these different messages from spirit to kind of bring me the affirmation, this is the right thing to do. And the first was realizing that Audrey, who I have known for 2 decades, actually was producing podcasts. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's the good thing to do. And then I was like, well, I don't know if I, have the skill set or the knowledge or the ability. And then you came in and you were like, I can help you with that.
Well, and you didn't know until I think probably after our session. I don't think you knew that when I booked the session with you, as a client.
Absolutely not. I had no idea. And, it wasn't until after we started chatting after the session where you were like, oh, I can help you with that. And I was like, whoa, okay.
The universe said, here you go. Yeah.
Big affirmation. So you're a part of the, journey of me feeling comfortable to tune into this and put this out there. So I'm super grateful for you being that vessel for spirit for me.
Oh, I'm honored that I listened to my intuition to book with you. And here we are.
Yeah, perfect. So speaking of following those intuitions and tuning in, today's topic is turning change into growth. And I'm a really firm believer that, change happens, growth is optional.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what we do with the changes that are happening in our lives is completely up to us. But I'd love to hear your take on that. How do you feel about that kind of shifting of change into growth?
Yeah. I love that you said that, change is going to happen inevitably, and whether or not we choose to grow from it is truly up to us. And I also think that not everyone, I don't know, I'd be curious on your thoughts around this. I don't think it's everyone's destiny to grow or to grow exponentially as other people do. And I think that a lot of times when we, and I'm speaking, me and the other people listening to your podcast are probably very interested in spirituality and growth and personal change. And it can become frustrating when the people that we love around us aren't going at the same pace as we are, and they're not as far along as we know that they have the potential to be. So that can be frustrating. But I just want to say, I don't think it's for everyone. And now I forgot what your question was because I'm so sidetracked. I've been wanting to acknowledge that.
Well, and I agree with you on that. And one of the things that I think confines us is that comparison or that judgment. And so, if we look at, where we are and what our path plan is and what our destiny is, and then we expect everybody to just be on our path plan. I heard someone say once, expectation is like putting resentment on layaway.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. I haven't heard that.
I was like, oh, okay. That's part of what I feel like I talk to people a lot about is what I consider almost like the healer's curse. We can see the potential, we can
Mhm.
see the possibility, but if we're not meeting them where they are, then not only are we discounting the growth that they've already done, but we're probably stopping the growth they can do. And the same for us because we're not like being in that moment. So I completely agree. And some
Yeah.
people, you know, say, well, what's my purpose? And your purpose is to be you, to be your authentic self, like
Yep.
bottom line, whatever that is for you, like, no measure to it.
I agree with that. As a life coach, I get that desperate question a lot of like, I can't find my purpose. And I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 50s, and I still haven't found it yet. And I just gently take people by the shoulders and say, your whole life is your purpose. It is you becoming whatever version of yourself that is in alignment with your values, that is in alignment, with your soul or whatever it is. And I also think that I would venture to guess again that the people listening to this podcast have a similar experience that I had. And even as a child, it retrospectively, I realized what that feeling was, but I have always been a seeker of some kind and, felt emotions and energies in the room and didn't know what they were, except that they made me very both curious and uncomfortable and wanted to talk about it. But as a good Gen Xer, like I didn't grow up in a family where they were like, yeah, let's talk about our feelings. Let's get
Right.
curious about that. No blame and shame to my parents. They did the best that they could with how they were raised as well. But as someone who's always been a seeker, I think that inevitably it is on our path of life to grow and to be
Mm-hmm.
really challenged by our change and transformation that happens throughout our life. And the key is, I mean, I'm sure we're going to get into that, but a lot of that key is just self-awareness and the
Yeah.
acceptance that this is in your DNA. You were born a seeker. You were born
Right.
someone who has this kind of whatever this energetic wavelength is to go leaps and bounds through your transformation in your life.
Yeah. To me, the other thing is, growth isn't linear. It's not, we can't go today I grew X amount and tomorrow I'm going to, it's not a formula that we get to, connect to. I just think, my favorite Maya Angelou quote is, I did the best I could with what I knew. And now I know better, I do better. And really like thinking about that process of like, did I try as hard as I could today? That's growth. Did I, succeed mountains today and molehills yesterday? That's still growth, like,
Mhm.
in that space. So that non-linearness is really important. And really, that when you were talking about the self-awareness, the idea of it, knowing without accepting creates suffering. Accepting without action creates suffering. And so that's where that kind of like take it out, look at it. Are you willing to work with it today? If yes, work with it. If not, put it back, but no, you're going to take it back out again and being able to kind of give yourself that permission.
Yeah. Which actually is a great segue to, I want to circle back to that Maya Angelou quote, which I love as well. But I want to acknowledge for anyone listening to this, because I'm right there with you. There are times where I have known better and I have not done better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's also growth.
Right.
To know, because that part feels so uncomfortable. Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
that's uncomfortable. And I do think I tell this to my clients all the time, like sometimes that's part of your journey is to see with your two eyes, like full awareness and acceptance that you are making the same mistake again that you have made before that has caused you to have great suffering, and you're going to do it again. And I mean, I'm an alcoholic. Like I have 12 years of sobriety, but still, like I know what that feels like to like
Right.
keep making the same mistake and keep doing the same behavior, knowing that you can do better. So I feel like that's an accelerator into change because staying in that place feels incredibly uncomfortable. So it's there's sort of this limbo
Yeah.
that's okay if you're one of those people that does that. It's okay.
Absolutely. And that to me, that sort of space to go like, we're still growing. If
Mhm.
you are taking that same lesson and working on it again, you're not technically literally repeating it exactly. What you're doing usually is shaving a little layer off of it and another little layer off
Mhm.
of it and another little layer until you're really ready for whatever the big lesson is. So, I think that as long as, if you have the awareness that you're going to make the same as, that, okay, I'm doing the same thing, then that's already a layer pulled off. And then, from there and there.
It hurts to set yourself on fire multiple times, but I've done it. I've done it.
Oh, right. And humans are the only self-sabotaging creatures on the planet. So we make that choice.
Hooray.
Did I really turn the burner on? Ow. Is it hot enough to boil the water? Ooh,
Sure is.
It is. So in that non-linearness, and I don't want to gauge it in any sort of measurement, because to me, it's not success or failure. It really is like skillful or unskillful is what the Buddhists would say. Well, today I was skillful with this lesson. Before that, I was unskillful in that space. What advice would you give to someone that would help them kind of at least stay in that self-awareness to continue trying again?
Yeah. I think having lots and lots of self-compassion along the way, because what I see happen is people gain the self-awareness. So I call it the point of no return. So it's usually someone is sort of, what do they call it? Like unconscious incompetence, like when you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to make that realization and you have that self-awareness. And once you get there, that's where they call the point of no return. You can't go back. You can't unsee it. You can't unknow it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also many times paralyzed because there might be grief, there might be, some unresolved trauma that's happening. There might be, who knows, some kind of destiny situation that maybe needs to happen. I don't know. You would know more about that than I would. But like, in order to move forward, you just can't yet. And so that space, many times people can start to beat themselves up for where they are, for the mistakes that they've made, for setting themselves on fire again, for, allowing tolerating people in their life and allowing their boundaries to be crossed, their values to be stepped on, comparing themselves to others. There's just a host of things that we as humans do to really beat ourselves up. And no one beats themselves up into more growth. No one beats themselves up into betterment, more success, whatever it is that you're after. And so you have to have, one of the things that I've learned, I've been doing this work for 16 years now, is that self-compassion is a non-negotiable. And I think, again, as a member of Gen X, like we grew up thinking, nobody likes a slacker. Like you just, you pick yourself up and you brush yourself off. Like you just get on it. It's the American way. So to be kind to yourself, to really hold your own heart with love and compassion and kindness and reverence can feel really uncomfortable, but it's so necessary, and I'm an Aries, I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. Like I get it done. Like I can be dominating and aggressive, but I'll tell you what, the most growth I've ever had and even more success in my life has been from being extra kind and soft with myself. And the older I get, the easier it comes, probably with experience, but that's really the key of it for me.
I agree. And, and embracing yourself the way that you embrace others, because we oftentimes are way more kind to the people around us than we are to ourselves. And I love to tell people to be their own best friend so they can know themselves like they know their friendships and embrace themselves the way they embrace their friendships versus constantly holding their energetic breath, believing that that's going to, I can take it, I can hold it in, it's sort of feeling, instead of going like, wait, let me treat myself as kindly as I treat the world.
Yeah, 100%.
So in that practice of turning change into growth and creating that space of loving the self in that, how would you help people still feel whole, even though they may feel like a work in progress?
I think some of that work comes down to helping people, guiding them through not just processing, but accepting all of their emotions that they might be feeling during that change. Because I also think we live in a culture where we have a really hard time around grief. And there's so many different times in our lives where we experience like pretty profound grief, and we typically like poo-poo it or push it aside because we reserve it for usually the death of a loved one. Maybe we'll think it's okay to grieve a divorce or a major breakup or losing a job, but there's so much ambiguous grief, people, their children going away to college or moving out, becoming an empty nester, moving, just like leaving a neighborhood where maybe you've built community. It's like these kind of, I don't even want to call them smaller, but like these different life events, having an injury, having a chronic illness that maybe doesn't even completely sideline you, but it changes your life in some way. And there's so much grief. I remember when I sold my first car that I had for at least 10 years, there was so much grief. And my husband at the time was like, I don't get it, and I was so upset. And I was like, you need to understand, like, this is marking an end of an era for me. It's marking like the end of my single life. And this car has been more reliable than most people in my life.
Yeah.
It was a Toyota, of course. I'll forever be loyal. But it just, we need to be able to accept, I got the word surrender tattooed on my arm many years ago after my dad died, because it was the biggest onset of grief that I had ever had. And it was so confusing to me and disorienting. And I wanted it to be linear, and I wanted to understand it. And I wanted to be able to engineer my way through it easier. And it kept taking me by surprise, these like weird moments that I didn't know would just completely take me out. I thought it was going to be when my dad's birthday came around, the first one that came around after he'd passed away. No. It was seeing a little girl flying a kite with her father that took me out for like the whole day. And so this grief that I had experienced, that was just, it was so much sorrow that made me realize, I think just as a culture, how we don't allow ourselves the time to process all of these emotions. And that's really, and this is a very long way of answering your question around feeling whole. But I think like in order to do that, in order to feel whole, and that you are truly walking through the world as your whole self, as a whole human, like we are emotional creatures, like first and foremost, 100%. And that has truly changed my life more than anything.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, is getting to the root of and processing my emotions and accepting all of them. And none of them are wrong. None of them are wrong. My behavior might be wrong from those emotions. Sometimes I can be a jerk if I'm feeling a certain way, but my emotions themselves are not wrong.
Right. And as the trilogy body, if we are a physical body, an emotional body, and an energy body, and we are discounting or discrediting our emotional self, then it's virtually impossible to be whole, because there's 1/3 of us that we're trying to stifle or quiet down. And then if we add, not honoring our energy self, then, we kind of outnumber ourselves in the support that we need. So it's, a valid and very important to recognize that energy body exists, and that it should have a voice, just like the physical body has a voice, just like the energy body has a voice.
Yeah. It sounds like a three-legged stool type of metaphor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to the idea of turning change into growth?
I think the other thing I want to add is around intuition. And I don't know about you or the people listening, but I've certainly been in that place where for many years, I think all through my 20s and 30s, really, where I spent the majority of my time questioning my own intuition, and also I was in a not great relationship where there was some gaslighting that was happening, and I thought I was going crazy. And then even, in 2020, I got sick and was gaslighting myself because I couldn't get a proper diagnosis from my doctors, and kept thinking, like, am I making all these symptoms up? Like, am I it was just all in my head. So I think that there are many factors at play that can make us not trust ourselves and our intuition. The thing that helps me the most, I think, just age and experience is one thing, but also really truly taking the time to get quiet. I love how you started our meeting today by just getting grounded, and it doesn't have to be this hour-long meditation twice a day. And I know some people do that, and if that's you, that's fantastic. But I don't have that kind of discipline yet. I might someday, nor do I have the time or even desire. So it's just these short moments of pausing to be outside when you see the birds fly by, and we're recording this the onset of fall, and like this is my favorite time of year, like watching the leaves fly around, and just never underestimate those small moments and how they can help support your intuition. And I look at it a lot like our immune system. And we have to make sure, for our immune system to work properly, we have to get enough sleep. We have to drink enough water and eat the right foods and all this, the basics of self-care. I think a lot of that goes into your intuition as well, to be able to hone that and have it work for us so that we can hear it more clearly and also trust it.
Absolutely. And I always talk about nutrients with people. So, when you were talking about the physical body and the immune system, we look at sleep is, a nutrient for that, but when we look at the energetic system and the intuitions, like, what are we feeding ourselves? Are we feeding ourselves junk food, which is just sometimes going I knew I should have done such and such and I didn't, finding out after the fact? Or are we supporting with healthy connections, which can be those 60 seconds of just taking a breath and calling your energy home to yourself and listening to yourself in that space. And then, you'll be rejuvenated and recharged and have that fuel that your intuitions need to feel supported.
Yeah, exactly.
So I ask every guest 3 questions. And so we'll start with the first. What do you think it means to be your soul?
It's exactly what we were just talking about. It is truly, I'm a believer that our souls have walked this earth before. And I think that sometimes we can use that to tap into that. I might be getting a little bit too esoteric there, but not that that's,
go where it takes you, go where it takes you.
Not on brand. But yeah, I do. I think that it's something that we're born with, and just to really deepen ourselves into it and lean in and trust it. And not just that, but to celebrate it. Like, if you think about it, how rad is it that we have this sixth sense that some of the strangest things have happened. And I mean, I'm sure everyone listening has had that experience where they did not listen to their intuition. It's usually 2 things, either a relationship and or a work experience, whether it was taking a job or something at work, where they had this gut feeling, they couldn't explain it, and then they did the opposite, and then it ended up falling apart somewhere. And it might have taken years. I mean, I can tell you so many stories. So it's just how amazing is it? And that it's also tricky because we live in a world where we want to see proof. We want to be able to measure things.
Right.
And we can't with that. It's not explainable. But that to me is honestly being your soul, is leaning into that and celebrating it and being grateful for it. I thank my guides and angels all the time, as much as I possibly can, and ask them to look out for me and give me whatever it is that I need, because I sometimes think I know what I need, but then they laugh. No, you don't. She's cute. Yeah. So that's what that means to me.
I love that. I love that. So what's one thing that you do no matter what to make sure you get your self-care every day?
It's so funny that I'm going to say this because, I'm 48 now, which, and I've been, my first career, well, actually my second career was in the fitness industry. That's my background. So I have been, I was doing Taibo in the 90s. It's always been really high energy, high impact cardio. And now it's walking. And if you would have told me this 10, 15 years ago, I would have laughed and said, that's the most boring thing I've ever heard of. Have we met? Never. But, perimenopause will do that to you. And also, and the reason that I mentioned that is because that also was listening to my body. My body was saying we're done with that. We don't need that anymore. We want to retire, and walking is plenty. I take my dog and just a 30-minute walk. And luckily we live in, central North Carolina, where the weather doesn't get too bad for us to be able to do that every day.
Yeah. I find when I take walks, especially with my dog, but when I take walks in general, you just feel immersed in the energy of the collective if you just allow yourself to be present and immersed in the interconnectedness of all things. A walk is the most beautiful thing for that to me.
Yeah, it's so easy for most people. Yeah.
And so then the last question is, what does feeling centered and balanced look like in your life?
It truly is. And I might be answering this a little bit differently, but it's the first thing that came to me. And that is nurturing and investing in my relationships with other women. I think that as we are become adults, it can be harder and harder to have time and prioritize those. When we're in school, and if we are mothers and have small children, sometimes it's even easier because there are play groups and preschool and things like that. But as we get a little bit older, it gets harder and harder. And so you do have to put an effort in. And I mean, there's research that shows how much healthier we are when we have strong friendships. And it has truly been a blessing for me, not just to have people to walk with me when I go through hard times, but it's an honor for me to be able to be there for someone else. And it's really beautiful to see how balanced that makes me feel. And just to know that we are here. One of the reasons that we are here is to connect with other people.
I totally agree with that. So can you let everyone know how to find you and any upcoming things that are going on in your world that you want people to know about?
Yeah, I don't have any upcoming things right now, but I have a podcast and it's called Make Some Noise. And I have a few books. So if you just go to AndreaOwen.com, it's all there. And I'm pretty active on Instagram too. It's one of my favorite places.
I love watching you on Instagram.
I do like to entertain myself and others.
You're always having so much fun. And I'm like, oh man, I just feel like I just had so much fun and I didn't do anything but watch you.
Some people call it immature. I just call it having fun and entertaining. So
yeah. We just can't take ourselves too seriously.
Exactly. Thank you. I do not.
Well, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And I am so grateful that you came on and that our paths crossed and have stayed connected.
Same to you. And I just want to also express my gratitude real quick for the people listening. I know that they have many choices when it comes to podcasts, and I'm grateful that they chose to spend it with us today.
Oh, same. Thank you.
Production of the Be Your Soul podcast is made possible in part by Little Energies, a children's chakra-aligned oracle deck. Little Energies is made specifically for children to learn and support their own healthy energy system. These 24 chakra-aligned oracle cards focus on energy wellness through mantras, exercises, and envisioning. You can pre-order your deck now by supporting our Kickstarter and receive it in time for holiday gifting. Find more information at tarotbysky.com. Stay tuned for That's What Sky Says, with a journaling practice to help you turn change into growth for yourself.
In this segment, I offer tools and guidance that I have found helpful in my practice, and maybe you will too. Today, we work on an exercise from my Understanding Energy in Action course that will help you identify your why behind wanting change. One important part of making lasting change, or what I would like to call growth, is identifying why the change is necessary. If you can see the value that the change brings to your life, then it will be much easier to stick with your choices. When we address challenges, concerns, and the need for change, we must look at both the comfortableness and the discomfort of our needs. Oftentimes, there are different reasons why we seek change. What turns change into growth is our dedicated focus to being the best version of ourselves. Here are some examples of why people want change. We can want change because we recognize something isn't working or feels bad. We can find ourselves stagnant where we are with little joy in our life and want to kickstart a growth process. We can feel as if we have gradually taken 22 half steps to the left and coasted into not feeling like ourselves. And now we need to take those 11 steps back to feeling aligned. We also can be content where we are, but know we want more growth for enlightenment's sake. There is no right reason to want growth, but there is a more productive way for achieving it. That supportive process begins with knowing why you want to grow and the motivation behind it. Knowing this brings lasting commitment to the process and a greater level of dedication. We will dig deeper into what you are trying to accomplish and the core reason changing your energy focus would be beneficial through answering a few questions. I just want to note that before you get started on this work, it's important to check in with yourself to be sure you know what your goals are. Then take a page in your journal and answer the following questions. What is your initial discomfort or specific reason to create change and refocus yourself? What about your world are you trying to improve that makes you want to change, enhance, or bring awareness? What will happen if you change into the healthy flow you imagine? What will happen if you do not follow through on this practice? What would identifying the change, making healthy choices to support the change, and the execution of the change look like in your life? Now sit and see yourself accomplishing this change successfully long term. How does it feel? Envision what your life is like now that you have created it. Can you see the long-term benefits? In order to succeed in anything, you need to know why you desire change. If you want to rewrite your story and live your new story, you need to have a big enough reason to do it. Your reason for investing your time and energy into creating change and refocusing your energy can't be something that you would just like to do. It has to be a must. So why must you do this? What's the real reason you want growth? Try to be specific without limiting yourself. Once you've answered these questions, let them sit for a few days and then go back and see how you feel about them. Then you can review them and see if the answers stay the same or where they need a little tweaking. Then what you choose to do with them is up to you. Since identifying the why begins a process, you can decide if you move deeper into this work with a coach, a course, deep self-work, or whatever you feel called. The key is to turn this concept of change into the actions of growth.
This is one exercise in Sky's Understanding Energy in Action course, which walks you through 26 modules of exercises just like this to align you with your authentic self. It covers everything from dream journaling to understanding your energy flow. So check it out on our website, beyoursoul.org. There you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our previously released episodes, find free bonus content, and more. And you can always subscribe to our Patreon for as little as $5 a month for early access listening, as well as PDF files of these helpful exercises. And there's more. Patreon allows the great work we're presenting to the universe to be supported by the collective. Find us at patreon.com/beyoursoulsky. And as always, links are on our website. This podcast is produced at Muddy Creek Studios.